welcome to another episode of Tesseract Talks, the place where we put the spotlight on tech trends, startups, and VCs. I'm your host, Marko, the founder and CEO of Tesseract Analytics, and it is my pleasure today to have Daniel Bobruk as our guest. He's a founder and CTO at ReBloom, a company that is reshaping the private investment market for secondaries through data and AI. Daniel, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me here, Marko. I've been looking forward for our conversation.
Amazing. We're happy to have you. And you have an interesting background, being both a theoretical physicist and a big tech nerd with a broad range of interests. Why don't we start by you telling us a bit about your career background and how it led to then launching ReBloom?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I might have a bit of an alternative background, ending up in finance as a startup founder. Yeah, so originally my formal education is in astrophysics, where I've been doing a lot of AI, machine learning, data science. And I then went to Switzerland, where I worked at CERN at the particle accelerator, so working with data in a particle physics context. Then after that, I moved back to Copenhagen, where I then joined a deep tech early stage VC fund. So there I kind of changed sides and thought, okay, I know I have this technical interest, but I also want to have it a bit more general because I didn't want to be too much in a box. Early stage deep tech just sounded really good with me. And that was also my entry into the startup scene, because I was a partner in this fund and we were only 3 parties at that point. So there was a lot of startup mechanics in that work as well. Started leveraging my technical background very quickly, because it was also around that time that all the various API solutions for AI providers came out. And I just had a lot of fun ideas for how to apply this within the domain of finance. So that I've been kind of part of that AI journey way from the beginning. And it was also here where I first time had the hands-on experience with secondaries as an asset, which we'll touch upon, and saw a lot of friction and a lot of inefficiencies within this asset class, which meant that we didn't have too many good experiences with it and basically stuck with the primary investments. But yeah, building all of this applied AI turned out into a spin out where I was the head of AI as well. And yeah, basically just been a really big tech nerd with a passion for AI since. And then after that, I met my co-founder, because the Copenhagen startup scene is kind of small. So everyone knows each other a little bit from networking. And yeah, we got introduced to each other, and we both actually have a background in venture capital. So we both shared some of these pain points, and that became the inspiration for ReBloom, which we've now built and launched.
Amazing. Great story. And can you tell us a bit first, what is the secondary market like? Also, what are the inefficiencies that you were seeing in the market that you thought like, hey, we can change this, we can add some value to this?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess the biggest distinction is if we look at public markets and private markets. So for example, public markets is everything that you and I can trade. We can go onto an exchange and trade shares, buy shares, sell shares, etc. But before that step, before a company goes public or does an IPO, it's in the private markets, where the only way to invest in it is either by going through primary investment rounds, for example, as a VC or angel investor, where you're actually part of that creation of new shares, or the secondary market. And the secondary market literally means secondary shares. So it's any investors that's been early on investing in these primary rounds. They want to create liquidity by selling off their shares. Then they go on the secondary market. So it's already existing shares in private companies like SpaceX, Revolut, ByteDance that are then changing hands.
Okay, great. And what year did you start the company? Just so the audience can understand what was happening in the startup scene. And then parallel at the time, what did you hear or see that you thought you could optimize?
Yeah, definitely. So ReBloom is not that old. We've been launched in the market for 7 months. And I think we really struck a nerve, because the momentum we've seen and the amount of support and just sheer supply and volume that we got on the platform is really extraordinary. Yeah, so during our time in the VC, where I first actually came across secondaries as well, we thought, okay, we had some portfolio rebalancing we wanted to do. So we wanted to sell off some secondaries. And the first thing that struck was that how fragmented the market was and how difficult it was to get access to it even. And then when you tried some of these platforms, got onboarded, then it was just one big black box. There was no transparency. We had no idea whether they actually had the assets or not. We don't know who they were speaking to. They were just like, hey, let us take the shares. We'll take care of everything. Don't you worry. And we didn't really feel like an active asset manager at that point. And it just didn't really, we weren't confident with so much black box shadowing over that as an asset. Also, because the market was so fragmented, it kind of excused these ridiculously high fees that they took. So they could take up to 7-8% for transactions. All in all, it was just not a really good business for us to operate in. And that had to do with all of the inefficiencies that were there. And then me and my co-founder, we met and said, why don't we actually create a solution for this? Why does it have to be this difficult? Why can't we try to optimize some of these inefficiencies? And that's exactly how ReBloom came about, where the first problem that we solved is access to the market. So we democratized access to the secondaries market. We built a lot of AI tools, both for matching between buyers and sellers, and also went into the due diligence space because a secondary transaction has these complexities and a lot of sub-processes that we know of via our backgrounds in VC. And then we built all of these optimizations for it. So the vision of ReBloom is to reduce complexities involved with secondary transactions, and that way through create more liquidity in the market.
To me, it makes sense. And I mean, you're only 7 months in, and I'm sure like there's a massive demand for this. Do you have any specific geo or type of companies you go after, or anyone is welcome? How do you at the moment approach this?
Yes, so that's actually a really interesting question, because in the beginning, and that has to do with this whole startup kind of journey, is that we have an idea of what solution is the one that's needed in the market, but we also had this adaptability. So in the beginning, we thought, okay, it's mostly for angel investors, private investors that want to, some old investments they've been doing, and they want a good supply of high quality deals, etc. But quickly we found out that, okay, this secondary space, there's most momentum in these very high prolific names such as XAI, SpaceX, ByteDance, all of these. And then we saw that to get access to these, they wanted more serious buyers. So we started moving more towards the institutional space. And that's where we really seen the dramatic change or shift in our momentum. That's getting the high quality institutional buyers on both the buy and sell side. So now we basically built a large order book on both those sides, and we are dealing with transactions in that space now.
Very interesting. And you also, as a technical founder, have to raise money for your company as well. So how do you approach fundraising? What criteria do you use to choose who is the right investor for yourself?
Yeah, so that's also something that we had to go through as startup founders. Naturally, fundraising is a big part of it. And what we've had in our experience is that we need someone on the journey that not necessarily understand all the technicalities of secondaries as an asset, because it's already a niche space within finance. So we can't expect early stage investors to have so much experience with that. And at the same time, we're using cutting edge technology within AI. That's also not to be expected that these are AI professionals within that space. So what we need, or what our criteria was, to have investors that believe in our way of execution, and also our thesis that we might have an idea of what solution is needed in the market, but we are adaptable and flexible, so that if we're going in the correct direction, always focus on the problem. And if we find out that actually we need to tweak or just do these minor pivots to actually hit the product market fit, then we need investors that are on that journey, that know that there's this mutual trust in the adaptability or changing of the platform.
Great. Very interesting. And what are now the next milestones you're aiming at for ReBloom over the next 6 to 12 months? What direction are you now heading towards?
Yeah, so we started by dealing with the matching and sourcing of the platform, build the AI tools here, giving investors on both sides access to the market, and also believing in their sovereignty to be individual investors themselves, so they can reach out to each other in an anonymized and private way. We then went into due diligence, where this is where we are building these industry first tools, both for the comps analysis, the liquidity event distributions, and for these document processing tools, where this is where the real core is, where we want to create liquidity at scale by optimizing these sub processes and thereby reducing the length of these transactions and creating more liquidity in the market. And yeah, now we have this large large volume of institutional buyers and sellers and these tools that are rolling out, while we are also releasing some of these industry first tools in the coming months. So we have followed our vision and we are quite on track with what we want to do here by creating more transparency in the market and enabling more players.
Mm-hmm.
And our end goal is to become this leading infrastructure, thereby create more liquidity by enhancing these processes.
Well, sounds really exciting. We'll all be watching closely and following the development. Thanks so much, Daniel, for coming to the show and sharing these valuable insights. I really do hope to have you maybe another time on the show so we can develop how you guys grew. But yeah, or perhaps when you come and visit London, would be great to meet up in person. But that was all for today. Thank you so much. And to our audience, until next episode. Bye.
Thank you so much, Marko. Bye.